So just start by welcoming everybody to the CSU Digital Caucus. We will be discussing massive online open courses today. I'm Jill Leifstead, an Associate Professor of Education at CSU Channel Islands, and we're happy that you've joined us. The caucus is a conversation amongst the digital ambassadors at the California State University campuses. We have been funded by Google to increase the innovative use of technology in teacher preparation. The caucus was developed as a means for faculty to gather and discuss topics that are important to the future of higher education and teacher prep. This is our first digital caucus using Google Hangouts on Air. The recorded session will be available to you on YouTube and through a link from the Google CSU Digital Caucus page after the session. Please use the comment section below the Hangout on Google to ask questions and give input. If you're watching the stream through YouTube, you are not able to leave questions. Please know that all portions of the Digital Caucus are public while we are going live. I'm going to turn it over to Penny Swanson from CSU Bakersfield to introduce what MOOCs are and to give us a brief overview before we begin our conversation.
Great, thanks. I'm Penny Swanson, professor at Cal State Bakersfield in Advanced Educational Studies. And the MOOCs just sort of appeared rather quickly on the scene, at least to many of us. A MOOC is a massively open online course, thus M-O-O-C. It's a way to deliver content. I'd like to emphasize deliver content to large groups anywhere. Generally, they're free, at least for now, unless the participant wants a certificate of completion or something similar. Variations range from simply putting out lectures to some form of engagement. Those forms of engagement might be a self-formed group discussion, of quizzes, regional study groups, volunteers fielding questions or setting up discussion groups, blogs, and tweets. With some, participants might select some level of engagement at their choice. They might make the effort to be involved in some online spaces, pay money for certification and scoring of material, or simply watching the show. Stanford, MIT, CCNY, UC Berkeley, University of Wisconsin-Madison, Mary Washington University, and more are offering MOOCs. These are courses, multiple sessions delivered online, often by recognized experts. They're not simply excellent lectures, such as offered on TED. The MOOCs phenomenon has been called a revolution by New York Times writer Thomas Friedman. Friedman suggests a generation that has grown up on these technologies is increasingly comfortable learning and interacting with professors through online platforms. Yet, is there meaningful engagement? Or is such engagement necessary for education to occur? Is it a revolution? Is it a new tool that will lift our profession? Is it a threat to real education? Let's talk. I'd like to introduce Mark O'Shea from CSU Monterey, a professor who has been through many of the innovations. Mark?
Hey, thank you. And so I'm going to turn this whole question over to the group for discussion by simply asking the question, do you as professors see MOOCs as a threat or opportunity for your future in teaching? And then, secondly, do you view MOOCs as a threat or opportunity for your institution in achieving its mission going forward for the California State University system and beyond for broader interests of higher education?
I'll go ahead and begin. I think that's quite a loaded question. There's a lot of ways to answer that for me. I think for myself as an instructor, I'm seeing this as an opportunity to look, see what other people are doing, have broader access to information. I see it as a way to bring other experts into the classroom. The institutional question is a little more difficult because I'm not sure how the institution is going to embrace this. Is it a matter of the institution saying, we are doing MOOCs, and so we're going to do these classes and we're going to offer them? Are we going to offer massive classes for a fee? Or are we going to try and do some other kind of innovation to attract students who would otherwise go to the MOOCs? Turn it over to the next person.
Well, I would offer that they could be construed as the source of lecture material for many general education kinds of courses in the future. So a distinguished professor from Harvard or MIT might provide the lecture material for a general biology class. The implications for the tenured faculty at a regional campus or a state university like CSU could be one of insecurity. Why would we need to have many professors in the tenure track ranks hired throughout the United States if general education courses could be delivered of high quality by recognized names in the field?
Some of you aren't old enough to have participated in watching the Continental Classroom. And Harvey White, a highly distinguished physicist, presented some wonderful material. But there was no interactivity. I remember getting up at 5:30 in the morning to watch that program. Great graphics for the time, great demonstrations. But there's an old Peggy Lee song that the refrain is that all there is? And even as a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old, I was frustrated with there wasn't anything else. I think this is kind of similar.
Well, yes, Matt.
Yes. One of the things that I am actually excited about is the massive part of it in terms of the new solutions that people are coming up with in terms of how to get feedback to a large audience of people. That sort of tool can really help us out. I mean, we spend a lot of time grading, giving feedback, learning from those people that are creating these massive courses, and how they're able to automate some of those processes can really help us at the regional school, where we can free up some of our time, even if our classes aren't quite, as massive, if they aren't 1,000 people. But if you've got 100 students, you can automate a lot more of those things and trying to use those tools that people are developing and those innovations, and then make our lives easier and better so that we can actually do a good job of interacting in person on the things that really do matter, where something we can deliver that people can't get from a massive course. So I'm excited about that.
Jill.
I think that idea that Matt just mentioned about what people can't get from a massive class is really important when we look at our students. And I think that this idea of open coursework, not necessarily the contained courses, the MOOCs, but just this idea of open material is really important for allowing professors to meet the individual needs of students. It's no longer difficult to give a lecture, record a lecture, even have the lecture transcribed, or to go out and find somebody else that's lectured on the same topic and have the students do a compare and contrast, post it to a blog, and link to other resources. These kinds of options with all this open material, I think, allows us to reach individual learners that have in the past had a really hard time accessing university-level coursework.
Well, I see an interesting relationship between these MOOCs and conventional higher education delivery of courses at large campuses. When I was a student at a large state public university, there was a generally large lecture session, and then during the course of the week, a graduate assistant or teaching assistant would have a discussion session related to the large lecture, and we would have opportunities to pursue matters raised in the lecture in greater detail with the graduate student. Therefore, there is an opportunity for the individual student to have access to assistance and to ask questions and to be guided through applications related to the large format lecture. Would this be the future with MOOCs, that we might have a massively open online course delivered as weekly content and then discussion sessions that take place followed by individuals perhaps assigned to laboratory work or some other practical application? Yes, Penny.
Would that be reducing our contribution, our value added, to what we were doing? I was one of those teaching assistants when my first PhD program was in history. And I was one of those people, taking students out of that 750 student class and trying to help them understand what had happened there. I think we have more value to add than the graduate students, yet we have to be very, very careful about thinking through of that role. How much of these excellent lectures add to what we can do, and what can we add? Our value added piece, what is it?
Yes, Mira.
All right, let me unmute my microphone. Can you hear me?
We can indeed.
Okay, great. So I'd like to share that I think our contribution is much more as guides to the students' learning than providers of information, right? Information is freely available online now. We don't need to provide the students with information. What we need is to guide them to, when they start going around in tangents and corners that were too far away, bring them back. Mm-hmm. I do think that lecture has very little value, honestly. I think that if the lecture can be done online, and great. And if it's a good speaker, good. We need to be there engaging the students, helping them find the answers to things. And that's why I really don't see any difference between a lecture of 100, 1,000, or 70,000. If it's passive learning, if it's someone giving just a lecture, I think they are all of them almost useless anyway.
Yes. I would like to comment on that, because going back to the individual learners, right? I mean, I guess my question back to you, I agree wholeheartedly, but should we give the student an option, right? So should they have the choice of getting a degree from a CSU that is exclusively open and through these online classes? If they're a successful student. We know that the research shows that students who are successful in class are also the ones that are successful online, who are successful in the blended environment. So is that something that we feel could go forward, that that they could have a choice to do one or the other, or is there a selection process? Where do they fall into what we currently do, I guess?
Vera, you have a response.
Oh, she's muted.
Okay.
You're muted. Now? Yes. Can you hear me now? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So my thinking on that is that we should have the option. We should give the students the option. But what we really need to be talking about and measuring is we need to assess whether the learning is taking place in someone's lecture or in someone's online environment. I think we need to be assessing the learning. We need to be determining what are our learning outcomes, what do we want them to learn, and assess and see if they are, learning. I think this whole discussion without data to show if students are learning, not if students like it, not if they are having fun, but whether they are learning what we want them to learn, it's kind of empty, really. I think we need research, and we don't need to be afraid of good speakers and good lecturers, as I said before. I think what we need to, because we know students need to be engaging with the material, and we need to be measuring that. That's what I think. My 2 cents.
Yes, Matt.
Well, again, I wanted to sort of, there's something I feel like is missing from our discussion, that we're talking about MOOCs as simply a lecture delivery process, and I think, Penny, in your original introduction, you talked about them as delivery processes, but there's also a lot of stuff that is about trying to come up with the peer discussion, the interactions, and those sorts of things. And so we kind of need to think about MOOCs are not just lectures recorded. There's all sorts of other things that they're doing along with them, and trying to promote collaboration and trying to look at what one of those things really works. I kind of want to bring us back to not just bashing lectures, but really thinking about this whole package of a MOOC.
Penny?
There are a variety of ways that interaction can occur within that MOOC, and I listed a few of them, but most of them are, if they're not paid for, are informal groups. And I think back to Vera's point, we have to decide how assessment will be done. And that's really a tricky piece. Can we have a multiple choice test to say, okay, they've gotten it? Or is what we do something more than that? Performance-based, or there's such a wide range of ways of assessing. And even more elemental is, what is education versus what is training?
Risa, you have something.
Right. So I agree. I agree assessment is important, but I think right now where we're at, and I'm going to speak a little bit from experience, is just trying to find ways that you can incorporate this into your teaching. Mm-hmm. We all have strong beliefs on how we teach and how students learn, and so there should be a great variety, and whether somebody chooses to lecture or not should be okay, right? Or they should be allowed to do that. But what we really need to start doing is thinking about how we're going to encourage people, get involved with this. This isn't that hard. It's not that challenging to do. There are little ways that you can bring other people in, and they can recognize, oh, I could actually do this. I mean, I think that's where we're at before we even can assess anything, is we have to get people to embrace it and say, oh, this could actually work. It's not going to be glitchy. Because as a high school teacher, a former high school teacher, I used to do a lot of, Iowa had a distance education program where we could communicate across to schools in the state of Iowa. And it was always kind of like, how do we do this? What do we do with it? And people didn't feel like they could get involved because it wasn't handy for them. And with this, it's so convenient. And just posing ideas and inviting people in, I think, could be what really gets snowballs and makes this accessible to more people. And when that happens, we'll get more variety in the ways it's delivered. I don't know.
Vera?
I agree, but I think that at the same time that we are, playing with it and trying to learn what is it that we can do with it, we need to, as teachers, always be reminding ourselves and our colleagues of all the literature that there is about the importance of engagement. Because unfortunately, there are some online courses that do, cater to discussions and writing. I do online courses, but most of them, unfortunately, are very simple and linear and multiple choice and non-interaction between peers, and very little interaction between students and teachers. But people should be trying, but we really need to all the time be reminding our colleagues about the study on how people learn, so that those things are considered when playing, when when creating an environment.
Yes, Jill.
I just want to add a little bit more and remind us all, this is the beginning of this. This is brand new. And this is only going to get better, right? I mean, look at sitting here streaming live a discussion of people throughout the state of California. This wasn't available a couple months ago. These MOOCs are professors who went out and had an idea, and they're just putting it out there publicly. There's going to be somebody that comes along and improves the grading aspect. There's going to be someone who comes along and improves the interaction piece, who takes those learning theories and creates it online so that it can work. And what my biggest fear is that people don't take this opportunity to get involved, and that we need to be part of it and not stand by the sidelines and say, oh, you know, these other universities can do it, but we need to ask to be part to make it work for the population that we have within the CSU. Because all of the hurdles that we're talking about, oh, it's lecture only, or the grading can help, but it's also not exactly what we want. My belief is that those are all going to be overcome in the near future. I mean, change is just happening so rapidly.
Vera, you have some additional to add.
Yes, I agree 100% that we should be getting involved. I personally am getting involved. But I feel like, I don't know, we're all talking about the technology, and not talking at the same time about the pedagogy that goes with the technology. I'm all for the technology. I embrace the technology, but I think at the same discussion must be happening about learning. And I don't see it happening. You know, it's true that I didn't read all the articles that were posted on the Caucus page, but I did read a few, and there was no discussion, at least on the ones that I read, about how do we assess if the students are learning. So let's embrace it, let's be part of it, but we need to be the advocates for, at the same time, measuring if the students are learning. And actually, the online environment makes it really easy to do that. We should be doing it at the same time.
Penny?
I think Vera had some really good things to say. We have a special population throughout this state of some students who have been traditionally underrepresented. And I think one of the powers of the MOOC is being able to go back and see something again. That's been one of the places where we've seen Sal Khan's material very well used in K-12. I need to see this again. My teacher helped me. I want to watch it again. Those kinds of things are really exciting to me, the possibilities of sharing and sharing again when it's convenient for that student. So that's exciting and not at all scary.
I have Matt next.
Sorry about that. I had myself mute. So one of the things that I look to is there's this nice meta study that the Department of Education, the U.S. Department of Education, has put out about what works in online education. It compares online to traditional to hybrid classes. And one of the things they find is hybrid classes tend to perform better, probably because of the interaction. But they also point to a couple other things that sort of that tie in with how people learn. One of the things is that online courses actually provide oftentimes enhanced opportunities for collaboration, something we don't do as much in our face-to-face classes. So that collaboration is actually enabled with the technology, as we evidence right here with our discussion. Feedback that's immediate and customized to the learner's performance. That's something that you can do sometimes better with technology, sometimes not. So sort of looking at those sorts of research and meta-studies about what works in online ed and why it works, and trying to capitalize on those things and fix the limitations of it. And MOOCs definitely have lots of those.
Jill, you had something to add, I believe.
Well, I must have lost it, but I do agree with Matt on the increased engagement in the online environment. And just looking at the manner in which we are able to interact and create that connection, that is, it feels quite personal. And I think that this can be applied in the online environment or outside of class time if students are consuming information and then getting together to discuss it. I'm not sure that there's a reason people have to sit in the same room to get that level of engagement and get the feeling that they really are getting to know one another.
I could agree. Penny?
I think one of the things that has been a little bit overwhelming for us is hearing 2,500 students, 7,000 students, 22,000 students, when what we really seem to be talking about is how can we personalize while using this medium. Because with our students, personalizing is extremely important.
Well, I think this suggests that the most important consideration is who is the individual who is closest to the learner and the learner's need when we consider this kind of a learning resource, its availability and its utilization. And I see MOOCs as one of any of a variety of resources that I would bring in to the learning experience for my students. And I would be looking at a MOOC in terms of its ability to meet the outcomes that I have in mind for my students based on their needs, based on the goals and the objectives of the specific course experience for which I'm responsible. And so to that end, they're yet just another additional resource. But I can also envision the future of a private sector coming forward with direct delivery to students based on some sort of mediation. And it'll be interesting to see the forms which that mediation might take. We're closing in on just a couple of minutes left. And I'd like to see if any of you out there have some concluding comments or opinions that you'd like to offer before we end this discussion.
I will go ahead and say something. I think this investigation into MOOCs and going forward and reading these articles has inspired me to have more conversations going on about the future of higher education and where we're going and where we're going to end up and what the students need. I think this is one piece of the puzzle. We could have gone in many different directions, but the MOOCs are in the press right now, and I think they're really pushing us to have that conversation about what it is we do in higher ed, what's the role of the faculty, how do the students participate and learn. So I look forward to continuing this conversation.
Penny.
Yeah, if you read the Thomas Friedman article, Come the Revolution, it sounds like the old Western movies. And the good guys, i.e. those sponsoring MOOCs, are going to ride in and save the day. MOOCs are potentially one part of a change in higher education that we're all part of, and they can be a very exciting and useful part. I appreciate the comments of my colleagues because we're doing something new, and this is exciting. And this, the Hangout Plus, is part of it.
Certainly is. Our own MOOC on MOOCs. Yes, Risa.
Well, I'm going to confess that I have a bit of apprehension. I mean, I'm very excited about the potential for MOOCs, but I guess I don't look at it as an all or none. I look at a lot of hybrid opportunities for bringing it into courses in more of a personal way and for the instructor to decide how best to do that. Because my fear is that there are probably a lot of us that would be intimidated by thinking that their teaching is maybe less valued than it once was. And I don't want that ever to feel like that's the case. So I guess I'm nervous as well, but I'm excited, and I hope others share my concerns.
Well, very good. And unless there are no final closing comments, I'll just simply conclude by stating that it's been a delight to hear the contributions of each and every one of you. I really do see these MOOCs having a future in higher education that will probably be substantial, in large part driven by a variety of practical considerations, not the least of which is containment of costs as higher education becomes more and more expensive and seen as less and less accessible, particularly to the kinds of students that we serve in the California State University system. So thank you so much, and I appreciate everyone's involvement in this MOOC about MOOCs.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.